morning, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of LiR Confidential on lirmedia.tv. And press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe to our channel. I'm delighted to say this morning, under these unusual and very, very sad circumstances, welcome Barry Shaw from Israel onto the show. Good morning, Barry, and welcome.
Pat, thank you very much for reaching out to me. I'm honored and I feel it's a duty to be here to give you information.
And we are absolutely fortunate and delighted to have you along, Barry. It's been, I think it's over a year and a bit since I spoke to you last, And Barry is part of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, but he's more than that, a well-known broadcaster and writer. And Barry outlined the last time I spoke to him how anti-Semitism is alive and well. Even when he was growing up, he grew up in Manchester, was it, Barry? Yeah?
Correct, yes.
And he felt the heat of anti-Semitism even then. And in Britain, it is very poor. I think I thought that people were going to pass that, particularly in Europe, where the destruction of the Jewish people began by the Nazi Party. But my God, the events, Barry, of October the 7th has been traumatizing, and I'll use that word. There's other words to describe it, on the Israeli psyche, I would say. What's the mood? Where do you actually live? Where are you speaking to me from?
I'm living in a place called Netanya, and those of you that know Israel know it's a seaside resort on the Mediterranean between Tel Aviv and Haifa.
All right.
Go ahead.
Go on, yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that although we seem to be out of rocket range from Hamas and Palestinian rockets from Gaza, we're probably in range of the rockets that may descend on us from another front that we're fighting Islamic jihadi terrorists, and that's the one of Lebanon. I'd like to say that my peaceful life in Netanya was sort of disrupted many years ago from another form of Palestinian terrorism. And this was one instigated by Yasser Arafat, who wasn't Hamas, but he was a terrorist. And he decided, after saying he was prepared to make peace of the brave with Israel, if only Israel would give the Palestinian territory, that we agreed, and we gave them territory, lots of territory. And then there was a signing of what's called the Oslo Accords on the White House lawn under President Bill Clinton.
I remember that, the Oslo Accord, yeah.
Now, I have to back this up by saying that in 3 times I went to Lebanon. Unfortunately, on none of them did I go there as a tourist. Lebanon is a beautiful country, but we were being assaulted from Lebanon by Palestinian terrorism, including having their terrorists come over the border, take over a school, slaughter the school children there before they could be destroyed by our IDF. I suppose if that happened today, people like the United Nations and maybe the Irish government, after they'd slaughtered our children, would warn Israel, don't go in there and cause any sort of civilian harm or damage, because we're watching you. And if you kill anybody who is not actually a subscribed member of Yasser Arafat's Palestine Liberation Organization, or Fatah, you'll be taken to the International Criminal Court. This is what's facing us today. Anyhow, he continued attacking us. And as I said, sadly, I had to go into Lebanon with the army to drive out Yasser Arafat. And he was deported. Instead of bringing to the International Criminal Court, he was taken to some other Arab country. And as a result of the peace accord that we made and the territory that we conceded to Palestinians, he came over and said he was giving us peace of the brave. That was a nice speech he made. But in fact, he gave us peace of the grave. Why does it come back to what I said about me living in Netanya and Tulkarem being 8 miles from where I live right now? Because after we'd given him all the territories that he was asking at that time, he inflicted on us what's called 2 intifadas, which is a nice Arab name of saying slaughter of Jews.
Yes.
And one of those, of many, was, you may recall, it was on the Passover, where Jews were assembled in homes or in hotels, and he sent one of his suicide bombers into the Park Hotel in Netanya and killed 36 people as they were praying the Jewish festival of Passover is our redemption from slavery and freedom in our ancient home in Israel. So, you know, what's going on about the slaughter of Jews has been going on for a long time. He promised us peace of the grave, but he gave us peace of the grave. That's part of the history, but I'll go into more detail later on.
Was that the one? Was that in 1973?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. The other. Let me give you another anecdote because it reflects on what's going on today. Some people may say that, well, Hamas is an Islamic wing of the Palestinians, but you know, most of the secular Palestinians want peace with Israel and everything. That, first of all, is a load of nonsense. Give you evidence of Yasser Arafat being one of the secular Palestinian heroes. On his way back from the United States, before coming back into the territories and going to Ramallah, he went to 2 places. He went to Egypt and he also went to Johannesburg, and he spoke in mosques in both places, and he was highly criticized by the congregations there for how dare you make peace with the Jews? It's against our religion. So what does this secular Yasser Arafat tell the people? He waved a piece of paper in his hand and said to them in Arabic, more or less, don't worry, this peace treaty I signed with the Jews is nothing more than the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Now, you and your audience don't know what the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was.
No.
But it gives you the lies, the deception of what's going on behind the whole Palestinian movement. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah was a treaty that was signed after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had taken Medina and wanted to take Mecca. And he went to war against the tribe of the Quraysh tribe that controlled Mecca.
Yeah.
And they won the battle against him. So what did Muhammad do in his deceitful way? He made a peace treaty with the people of Quraysh, right? Who were controlling Mecca. And that gave him time to go away, renew his forces. Well, the people of Quraysh said, oh, we have peace with Muhammad, so we'll go about our trading and our business and have a nice life and everything.
Yeah,
so one day, suddenly the hordes of Muhammad came back and won the war, slaughtered all the men, took the women as slaves in Mecca. That's the way he took Mecca. So when Yasser Arafat told the Muslims, don't worry, what I signed with the Jews is nothing more than the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, this is a deception of the Palestinians today.
Now, you know, there's no mention there's very little mention in the media here of the big player behind the scene is Iran.
Yes.
And Biden, in his address last night to America, you know, he gave a press conference. I don't just see any of it, but he said he did warn Iran, even though there was attacks on U.S. Marines over a week ago, where up to 15 or 20 of them were injured by Hezbollah, which are backed by Iran. He said, we will take action. We know who caused this. But that was a week ago. They only revealed it last night, you know, a week later after these injuries to the American soldiers happened, which are based over there. And so from the Israeli point of view, I mean, Hezbollah would be much according to the media, would be much better armed than Hamas, would be a greater threat to Israel. That's what we're being told at this side, in any case, Barry.
Well, I can tell you at this moment of time when I'm talking to you that Israel is split on this. Some people were impressed by President Biden, who came over here and gave us an embrace, met the people of the Israelis, the family of people who are now currently in Gaza as hostages of Hamas. I said some wonderful things. But I'm of the camp that actually Biden does the talk, but he doesn't do the walk. He has repeatedly said that there is no evidence that Iran was in any way behind this sudden attack by Hamas. I think he has the information and he's hiding it, or he doesn't have the information, which is worse. But we have the information that a month or so before October the 7th, Hamas terrorists were in Iran doing training. We know that Iran supplies the money to Hamas and Hezbollah. We know that they provide the technology and the science and some of the weapons that were smuggled into Gaza from Iran. Iran is Hamas, Iran is Hezbollah, and any denying that Iran is not totally absorbed in this doesn't know the information. They don't know that, for instance, and they should know, certainly American intelligence should know, that before this attack, the Iranian foreign minister went to Beirut and met with the the Hezbollah hierarchy of military in Beirut. And then he flew from there to Doha in Qatar, where he met the leaders of Hamas to coordinate with them, and then he went home. And shortly after that, what did we have? October the 7th. So the President of the United States says there's no evidence that Iran was infiltrated with what went place here. Makes me extremely worried.
Well, for someone, and I'm just an ordinary pleb, and I know and I can understand when you watch international discussions on these things, the dogs on the street, for an analogy, knows that Iran are behind this, are behind Hezbollah, and are financing them as well, But tell me, Barry, just going back a few steps, how important for the psyche of the Israeli people were the Abraham Accords under Trump at that time? How important was that step? Was it a giant step from the point of view of harmonization, for the want of a better word?
Absolutely. Under Trump, you had what we call a very strong America, very affirmative. He didn't just speak, he took action.
Yeah.
And there were some actions, for instance, where the Iranians were attacking American interests in the Middle East. He said, if you do anything like that, if you touch one American, I will bring down hell on you. And they made an attack of trying to attack the United States embassy in Iraq. And as a result of that, within days, the leader of the Iranian forces, Soleimani, was taken out by an American missile. He was in a plane.
Yeah.
And then he followed that up by saying, you touch one American again. This is what he told the Iranians. You took 52 hostages under President Carter. You touch the hair of one American, we are going to hit 52 targets in Iran. You know what happened after that? Iran didn't dare touch one American.
No.
We don't have that with Biden. No, I can tell you now militarily that there are 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean right now.
Yes.
But they're not there to come into action if Israel, for instance, is attacked over our northern border or eastern border. Biden will not give the order anywhere for the American forces to come physically to the aid of Israel. They are there simply to protect American interests in the Middle East, not Israel. So we really are alone in this battle. The other thing I have to say about Biden, two things. First of all, going back, these people don't know this, but when he was vice president under Obama, and Obama was really upset by Israel, and particularly Benjamin Netanyahu, who was really ordering him, begging him not to give in to Iran, not to make this nuclear deal agreement with Iran, not to give them over $100 billion in cash, because they will use it in order to strengthen their proxies around the Middle East.
Yeah.
And he even went to Congress to make an appeal. And this upset Obama so much that the last thing that he did before he left the White House was he put in a request into the United Nations Security Council called Resolution 2334, in which he got Biden, who was his vice president at that time, to lobby votes for this resolution, which says that Israel is illegally occupying territories in which we live, and we have been living for some time, which is also part of our heritage, for instance, going on, including, for instance, Area C, which, according to the Oslo Accord that Arafat signed, was supposed to remain in Israel's possession until any other agreement on the remaining territory is agreed between the two parties, in which case Israel may or may not leave it. But in the meantime, it remains solely under Israeli civilian and security control. But the Palestinian Authority, nobody has ever come forward to sit with us and negotiate for this. However, the point I'm making is that Obama raised this resolution, and usually Israel has the support of the United States, who put in a veto. He didn't put in a veto, and he was assisted by Vice President Biden.
Right.
So the final sentence on this score before we move on was that when Biden came over here and met Benjamin Netanyahu and met the family of the hostages, he didn't say, we're standing shoulder to shoulder with you. He said, we have your backs. And I wrote at that time, that makes me more worried, because I don't want Biden's on our back, because the last time he did that, he stuck the knife in.
And a lot of commentators ignore things like that and ignore history, as well in the media. They're not very well informed on the situation that pertains in the whole Middle East area, the politics of it, which at the end of the day decides an awful lot of things behind the scenes. But one person in Biden's cabinet that impresses me a bit is Antony Blinken.
No. Antony Blinken is the Secretary of State.
He is.
He's also Jewish.
He is.
We call a gyno. And he is deceptive. He is certainly one for weakening Israel and trying to push a two-state dead solution, a node solution, which should be going for 50 years. But he's not covered by the real politics of what's going on the ground here.
Right, and Barry, I would
forcing Israel to major concessions without getting any concessions at all from the Palestinians.
And I would say to you that an awful lot of commentators are coming on now about a two-state solution. Now, it's a throwaway sentence for a lot of people without putting deep thought into it. First of all, in the West Bank, you have a group, you have an organization called Hamas, who are dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. And yet people are calling for a two-state solution. And
well, let me give you a realistic view of what this so-called two-state solution, which I described as a 50-year-old dead camel, is lying rotting in the burning sands of the Middle East. And the people like the Blinkens of this world are trying to drag this dead camel somewhere in the distance across the buoyant burning sands, because they can see a distant horizon which has the name peace over it. And they haven't woken up to find that this camel is in fact dead. And basically to prove it, I have come up with despite what everything is going on, to tide the water, I have written and presented a proposal of how to solve the Hamas and Gaza conflict that we've got right now in a non-violent way. Do you want me to talk about it now or later?
Oh yeah, you can keep going. Yeah, that's no problem.
Right. Well, okay. Well, this solution has very strangely a country that you would not suspect could be the linchpin of this, and it's one that's not very all that friendly to Israel, Qatar.
Yeah.
Why do I mention that? Because we have what we have right now is the Israeli Air Force is now preparing the ground, taking out Hamas targets and preparing the ground for a massive land incursion against the murderous, subhuman Hamas who are holding hostages. My solution is that the people who really control the Palestinian or Hamas leadership is Qatar, because your viewers might know that the Hamas people on the ground are not the people who are giving the orders. The Hamas people giving the orders are in two places. One of the Hamas leaders are not in Gaza. They're in Doha, living in luxury apartments. They're millionaires now, and they're giving the orders safely from there. So my situation, running through it very quickly, is Qatar, the Hamas would do what Qatar says. So Qatar would say, work out this deal with the United Nations and with maybe the United States, and say that you, Hamas, must first of all release all the hostages. We will protect you, and then we will give you safe passage out of Gaza to be protected here in Qatar. Now, that way, you save the hostages, and instead of we going in having to kill Hamas, or what the international community should be doing is dragging everyone to the International Criminal Court. Of course, they won't do that. They're saying that for Israel.
Yeah.
They will be moved to Qatar on one condition: if any of them leave Qatar, they can be arrested and put on war crimes and humanitarian crimes and dragged to the International Criminal Court. So there we've saved the situation peacefully, if you like, for that, of getting the hostages back and getting rid of the Hamas terrorists. But now we have the semi-destroyed Gaza because of Hamas. My argument is that this must not be handed over to the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority still is a terrorist organization, an anti-Semitic terrorist organization. And they failed to look after their own people in what we call the West Bank or Jerusalem area or whatever they've got. Totally failed. They are unpopular, which I'll go through in a minute. But however, there is a person who is a Palestinian who I said should be the managing director, I don't want to call it, not the ruler of a new Gaza. And his name is Mohammed Dakhlan, who used to be part of the Palestinian Authority. Before it used to be the PLO and Fatah, until he left them. Didn't want anything to do with Hamas, totally opposed it, totally opposed the Palestinian Authority, wanted to run against Mahmoud Abbas, but was ejected, and moved to Doha in the United Arab Emirates to have a peace agreement with Israel, where he became a very successful businessman and a billionaire. I think Gaza should be reconstructed by the Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the Bahrain, with the help of the United States, with Israel and Egypt, because they're the border, to make sure it's built and made into the new Côte d'Azur of the Arab world, the Monte Carlo of the Arab world.
Absolutely. And
it began that way because when Israelis had it, we were beginning to turn it into literally a paradise, the parts that we were there. It can be restored into a paradise, but it cannot and must not be under the control of the Palestinian Authority in aid of people like Blinken's and Biden's dream of a two-state. It should become the three-state solution. You can have the Palestinian Authority look after their territory over there. You have Israel, and you will have this new Gaza led by a Palestinian, supported stronger by the moderate Arab world, to turn it into something that the territory under the Palestinian Authority isn't and will never be. And then sometime in the future, when it is restored and it is becoming peaceful and prosperous, the government of Gaza can decide whether they want to remain independent or whether they want to confederate either with the Palestinian Authority or with Israel. We don't want to go back into Gaza once we've removed Hamas. So let's get rid of that notion. So that is my way of actually solving the situation peacefully and turning a two-state solution, a failed two-state solution, into a more successful three-state solution. Israel will be prosperous, Gaza will be prosperous, and I think the part ruled by Mahmoud Abbas will be the total corrupt ruin that it is right now.
And LiR Confidential is the show here on LiRmedia.tv. You're looking at speaking to Barry Shaw from Israel. And don't forget to press the red button on the right-hand side. Now, Barry, when I was in Israel a good few years ago for my first trip, it was an eye-opening experience for me because you can have a different attitude towards the country when you removed this distance from it. When I went there, you have quite an Arab population integrated in Israeli society, trading, shopkeepers, butchers, teachers, members of parliament, members of the Knesset. How is that community responding to this trauma in the country?
You're talking about the Israeli Arabs,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I want to tell you, we have members of the Arab community in the Knesset who actually one of the party in particular do not acknowledge Israel, and yet they sit in the Israeli Knesset. How's that for democracy? But I would like to see a Jewish party in the Palestinian Authority. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
But the Arabs over here are 100% behind us. 100%. They're coming out on Israeli television and talking about it. Thank God they said they have Israel, because if they didn't have Israel, they would worry that even over here would come under the control of Hamas. This is the last thing they want. I did an interview just yesterday. I interviewed somebody else who was a friend of mine, who is a Maronite Christian who lives in the north of Israel, and he is Israeli. He comes from Lebanon, as most of the Maronite Christians in Israel did, in order to flee both the Palestinian Yasser Arafat and also the rising rule of Hezbollah. And they fled, and Israel took them in, and they have become productive members of Israeli society, to the extent that the man that I interviewed, the Maronite Christian, you can look him up, Shadi Khalul. In fact, he helps recruit the young Maronite Christians into special units of the IDF. And he has a center in the north of Israel. So any Christians over there who are interested should look him up and go visit him when you're making any trips to Israel. So totally behind, 100% with Israel. And you can go to somebody called Yosef Hadid, who was perhaps one of the best spokespeople unofficially, is an independent guy, and he's an Israeli Arab, and he tells you about the truth about Israel and, on the other hand, the Palestinians.
People should see it for themselves, the diversity of the communities that are living and prospering in Israel, must be said. Now, Barry, the disquieting thing for me, anyway, having a lovely country itself, is this ground invasion by Israel they're all saying is imminent. Now, what's the talk over there? I mean, obviously, the objective is to destroy Hamas the same way that ISIS were destroyed. But as you know, as you and I know, we're around long enough to appreciate and understand that street fighting, hand-to-hand fighting, is one of the most difficult projects to be involved in. And the ground invasion, if you want to call it, will happen. Do you think that will happen?
Yes. No doubt. There is some information I know about, but I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
What's going on now is the Israeli Air Force are taking out all the Hamas targets. They're spread in certain major locations within Gaza. They're also preparing the ground for land invasion. Unfortunately, sadly, we've been in Gaza before. We know even in the West Bank, in Jenin, and all the Arab territories over here, when we have to send forces in to try and arrest terrorists, whether the Hamas or others, what happens over here, the booby traps and things like that. So the land is being prepared so that the ground forces can come in without being caught in the narrow alleyways and everything, caught with booby traps and whatever. This brings me on to another point, if I can raise it here. Yeah. You're going to hear over there about we have to be careful of civilians. We don't kill civilians, and you're going to hear rising number of civilians who have been killed. Israel is the most moral army in the world. They're even more moral, if you believe it, than the British Army. You can ask Colonel Richard Kemp about that.
Yes.
We deliberately avoid as much as we can civilians as civilian targets. But what we see, or what you see if you're watching, if ever we're going into places like Jenin or other places in order to arrest some of the terrorists that have murdered Israelis and Jews in Israel, we know where they are, and we come driving in, either on foot or in armored vehicles. We are attacked not by Hamas members at that time, but what your media would, I suppose, would call innocent civilians who try and put barriers down and start throwing not only rocks at the soldiers, but also shoot at them and also fire explosive missiles and Molotov cocktails as the army is going in to initially try and arrest the terrorists, but if not, kill them. So I would ask you, your viewers, these sorts of people who pick up arms and even civilians, not in army uniforms, of course, against the soldiers who are coming in to try and get to the targets where the hardened terrorists are held up. Are these people innocent civilians, or are they people who are in support of Hamas? I would say the latter.
No,
if my family members go into Gaza and we know where the target are that they're hitting, and on the way we are attacked by people in civilian dress, throwing missiles and attacking us or whatever, are we entitled to kill them? Are we entitled to neutralize them in order to get to the target?
Now,
I would say if it was any British army, they would do it. The American armies would do it as well. This should also apply to the Israeli army, and we shouldn't be accused of committing war crimes if these are people who are killed or injured. That's one of the things I have to put over. It's a very important point, because this is what you may see later on.
So the ground fighting is inevitable anyway. This could be a very long war, Barry.
Oh, it's going to be. One thing I can tell you about, it's not going to be a quick way to go in to get the centers of Hamas and to wipe them out and then withdraw. We have no intention of keeping Gaza for ourselves. But this operation, I can tell you and your followers, will be at least 2 to 3 months, because we're going to go at it surgically. And we're going to go place to place, house to house, tunnel to tunnel. Did you know that Hamas has built, with the aid and the money that should have gone to the Palestinian people, 300 kilometers of underground tunnels? 300 kilometers is what, 200 miles? You haven't got a 100-mile underground system, even for your railways in Ireland. Hamas has 300 kilometers, right? And part of the war is in order to get to these entrances and exits of these places where they store themselves, their missiles, their armaments, their rockets, their hostages. This is a sort of horrible warfare that we've got to go into. And we keep warning. I heard one this morning, I can't remember how many times, that the Israeli spokesman is telling anybody who remains in Gaza, head south now. We've been doing it repeatedly. Go down to the United Nations facility, evacuate the place, because we don't want to harm you. I want to tell you, most have left. Those that remain are there for why? Because they support Hamas, because they're family of Hamas, and because they're, they're not in uniform like Hamas, but they're there to support them. So you're going to see nasty scenes. While we're talking about the war, let me come on to another thing that really upsets us over here, is the way that your politicians and your media have got over their crocodile tears, which lasted about 48 hours from October the 7th, where they were shocked to hear the way that Palestinian terrorists had invaded Israel and killed 1,400 and counting Jews, babies, girls, elderly people, slaughtered, beheaded, burnt alive, dragged into Gaza. They got over those crocodile tears. And now that you're going to see the real ugly face of the media, I'm in a dispute with Sky News UK right now, where I've employed lawyers because I was so offended by the interview by a Sky News reporter, Anna Botting, who was interviewing an Israeli Democrat, Mark Regev. And the news had come in that a hospital had been hit by an Israeli airstrike. And this woman was sitting there taking that as truth because she was getting her information from the Hamas Ministry of Information and the Hamas Health Ministry. And as she was interviewing him, the death figures were going up from 100, 200, 400, 500, right? And she was accusing him of doing war crimes. And at the end, I don't know how he kept his patience. He tried to reason with her and she wouldn't let him finish the sentence. And she finished the interview when he said, perhaps you should reserve judgment until the evidence comes in. And she said the two unforgivable words for a professional journalist, not interested. When you have your media saying, when they're interviewing or interrogating or accusing an Israeli representative being not interested in the facts, not interested in the truth, you know they're embedded with the Hamas themselves because they feel so much sympathy for the poor Palestinians. I'll end with this. And this is part of my my argument with Sky News. I said also, of course, everybody knows it turned out that evening when I flipped off this and I went back to the Israeli news, the IDF spokesperson was saying, this was not one of our shots. We never targeted it. And it has all the R marks of either a Hamas shortfall missile or rocket taking off from there, which exploded before it took off. This is what happened. But what I accused the Sky News is when you eventually get into Gaza and you want to give your sub-story about the poor Palestinians, and you're going to go to Shifa Hospital in Gaza City to report on the dead and the wounded and whatever, I demand of Sky News, I demand of your Irish media, I demand of the American media to go down to the basement in the same Shifa Hospital. Why to go down to the basement? Because there will you find the operation headquarters of the Hamas terrorist organization and their campaign going on. They are bunkered down for their own safety and doing the operation and using a hospital, which is a war crime.
That's true.
And I want to tell you, your media will not go there because they were born by Hamas. You can't do it. They should insist. The Red Cross should insist. The United Nations should insist to go there and point out to the world where the Hamas terror organization is operated from. That is an international crime and have them arrested. And the second thing they should do, Sky News, your media, who care so sympathetically for the Palestinians, should insist on being taken in Gaza to visit and interview the hostages. The Red Cross should insist on going to see the hostages. Well, the United Nations should insist on going to see the hostages and come out with a full report on what they find there. Are they alive? Are they dead? Are they being tortured? How many are there? Because nobody is doing that.
No, nobody is doing that. What is it? Nearly 20 days later, there are no demands from the United Nations or the Red Cross to look after the well-being of the hostages. This is absolutely shocking to me. Absolutely.
Not at all. Now you can begin to see, and look, Pat, this is why I'm so grateful for you, to giving us this opportunity for putting some facts, hard facts forward, because it's not been covered in Ireland, not been covered in other countries.
No.
I think people are watching this from other countries. Please, this applies to your government as well.
Can I just say to you, also the situation in Gaza as well, about the water and all of that. I heard one story, believe it or not, I heard it on Russia Today, believe it or not, I look across all media, that the water pipes were dismantled by Hamas to make it into bombs and missile launchers.
But we know, Matt, we know already that Hamas are stealing the aid that President Biden insisted that we have to agree to open up the border. That's humanitarian. But part of our strategy is to deprive our enemy, Hamas, of the fuel to fuel their rockets and their vehicles, and of all the other stuff that they need that's going to come into Hamas to feed their people. While the aid can go, for instance, to the United Nations facilities in southern Gaza, but not be stolen by Hamas, who operates the United Nations. And we got a report yesterday from the Israeli IDF spokesman that, in fact, Hamas is already pilfering the stuff that was allowed in. And we had to hold up our grand arrangement in order to let it come out in. Yeah. So Hamas are using these psychological games and stealing the stuff that we told them they're going to do.
You were speaking about Sky News there, which is appalling. The BBC won't allow Hamas to be called terrorists.
What do you have to do to be called terrorists?
What
more can you do?
Yeah, but they won't.
Babies.
They've been called out in it, but they won't refer to Hamas as terrorists.
You know, I was yesterday, for instance, I was being interviewed by the Australian Jewish Association.
Yes,
and they have a situation over there that how can I put it to you? It's so distressing what's going around the world. Yes. We are surrounded in the free world by the supporters and enthusiasts for Hamas. On October the 8th, when we were absorbing the horror of what went on around the south of Israel, and the body counts were going up to over 1,000 or whatever. We were getting these horrific scenes. On that day, 24 hours after we'd been hit by these Palestinian slaughterers, subhumans, there were thousands allowed on the streets of Sydney outside the hospital, outside the Opera House. I put this on my media, on my Facebook, on my Telegram, on my Twitter feeds for you watching it, where the mayor of Sydney had allowed these people to take to the streets, and they were chanting, Allah Akbar, pardon the language, fuck the Jews, gas the Jews, Allah Akbar. In other words, they were celebrating the slaughter of Jews. And when the Jewish community said to the mayor of Sydney, why did you allow this to happen? Do you know what her answer was? I'm neutral on this matter.
Yeah.
When you are neutral on the slaughter of 1,500 Israelis, beheaded babies, our girls raped and burnt alive, and worse.
Yeah, people would
have that. And I told people in the Australian Jews, this call in support of Hamas and this call of people protected by the Australian police for their free speech rights to say, kill the Jews, gas the Jews, it comes down to the mayor of Sydney. The next time, the first time, an Australian Jew is suddenly slaughtered. And it's happening in America right now.
Well, in London last weekend, there was a Palestinian march where they waved the infamous ISIS black flags. They were allowed to carry them freely. They were shouting those slogans as well, Barry, in London. No surprise. Now, we participated, a couple of us here in Limerick. We drove up to Dublin 2 weeks ago now, Sunday, to take part in a prayer vigil and a chat outside in solidarity with the small Jewish community in Ireland outside the Israeli embassy. And it was a fantastic day. We marched from our LiR to the Israeli embassy, and really, I mean, you could see the trauma even on the community, the Jewish community. I know some of them. I mean, it was just appalling altogether. And we have two virulent anti-Semite TDs in our Dáil who were spouting appalling stuff in LiR and in Ireland, which is an embarrassment to all sane people. You know, it doesn't matter what you think. I mean, to have this level of anti-Semitism in our country is very disquieting to me anyway in 2023. But we have been on the wrong side of history down through the years as well when it came to the Jewish community, you know. So we you know, it's no surprise at that level. But I must compliment both our Prime Minister, our Taoiseach and our Taoiseach on the steadfastness of them and on their very measured and rightly so contribution to calming down and to take the hostile voices out of these and the anti-Semitic voices out of it in our country, you know.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you that I appreciate is the right word, that there are people in Ireland who support the Palestinian cause. But I warn, the Palestinian cause is one thing, but really, do you really understand the essence and the heart of the Palestinian cause?
Yes.
It was about land. Ryan, I'll give you some information. But Pat, I wrote a book about 8 years ago. Can you see it?
I can, yeah.
Fighting Hamas, BDS, and anti-Semitism. Why did I write that? I wrote this because there's a whole mix. If you're talking about you can talk about the Palestinian cause, but can you do it without being anti-Semitic? And I want to just tell you the first sentence of the book. I would suggest some people get it if they want to educate themselves. And I wrote then 8 years ago, for the purpose of this book, Hamas is a metaphor for all Palestinian terror and all anti-Semitism. So that's how it starts off. Now, why did I write that? I write it because some people now are, I don't call it pretending to support the Palestinians as a front, as a disguise for their own anti-Semitism. I've been speaking to audience and I've confronted, for instance, BDS activists who say they feel sorry for the poor Palestinians. And I've exposed in front of audiences how they don't give a damn about the Palestinians. It's just Israel they hate. But I want to give you just one example before coming up to strengthen my point. A lot of people say that, you know, the poor Palestinians are suffering because we're illegally occupying their land. Well, let me just give you a short list of the territory that we had. I don't want to go back in history to the time when actually Palestinians were given a land, and it's called Jordan at that time. The agreement was that the Arabs must be compensated when the British and the Allies came in at the end of the First World War and drove out the Ottoman Turks, and then they had to divide up the land. So Palestine at that time was divided into two countries. One west of the River Jordan, that was to be the Jewish state of Israel based on its biblical history. The other side was to be called Transjordan, which became Jordan to sacrifice the Arabs on that side of the River Jordan. And also, the Arabs also received Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and also Lebanon. So the Arabs were richly rewarded. But now they come and say, well, we didn't give them enough land. So we went to Oslo, as I mentioned before, and we gave them, for example, Ramallah, Nablus, Jenin, Tubas, Tulkarm, which is 8 miles from me, Jericho, half of Hebron, the Gaza Strip, Kalkilia, and even Bethlehem. So to say that we're illegally occupying, these we gave over to to Yasser Arafat and also to Mahmoud Abbas, and they became hotbed of Palestinian terror, and they're coming out at this time. Without October the 7th, 180 Israelis have been killed this year alone, not out of Gaza, coming out of the territory that we gave over to the Palestinian Authority. Now, why would they do that? That, first of all, gives a lie about we're illegally occupied territory. We gave it to them. We're prepared to give them more once they can put down their arms and sit with us in peace, and then we can have two prosperous countries. They haven't done it to this day.
That's true.
The other point, I've written an article and I want to express to you, and this is important, and any of your people watching this should make a copy of this and really write down or copy what I'm about to tell you, because I'm making the case where it says, well, Hamas, you've got a Hamas on one, Palestinians on the other. And I make the case that Palestine is Hamas and Hamas is Palestine. What do I mean by that? I have a list here, factual list, true list, which even people who support Palestinians can't deny. Every one of Palestinian leader and every political organization to represent the Palestinians are terrorists. Arafat was a terrorist before he received the Nobel Peace Prize. He was a terrorist. Arafat was a terrorist after he received the Nobel Peace Prize, because that was the time he came killing us in Netanya as well. Yeah. Mahmoud Abbas is a terrorist. He had an occupation. He had education in Moscow on Holocaust denial, and he gives money to terrorists. By the way, listen to this: for every Jew you kill, you get money. This applies also, by the way, he's obligated to give money to the Hamas murderers of 1,500 Jews. Why? Because they're a rival political body, but at the same time, they're Palestinians, so they receive the money as well. Comes out of what's called the welfare system that you Europeans and other people give to the Palestinians. So he's a terrorist.
Yes.
Khaled Mashal is a terrorist. Marwan Barghouti is a terrorist. He's one of the leaders to replace Mahmoud Abbas, by the way. Yahya Sinwar is a terrorist. Marwan Issa is a terrorist. Ahmed Yassin is a terrorist. Mohammed Daf is a terrorist. The PLO is a terrorist organization. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine is a terrorist organization. The Hamas is a terrorist organization. Palestine Islamic Jihad is a terrorist organization. The DLFB is a terrorist organization. The RPCP is a terrorist organization. The PPSF is a terrorist organization. And this list doesn't include the hundreds of terror operations or the thousands of Palestinians who have committed murder and attempt to murder Israelis even this year without being officially affiliated with any of the so-called political parties. So Hamas is Palestine and Palestine is Hamas. This is the way you look at it. You tell me, those who support Palestine or support Hamas, tell me any organization, tell me any leader who has not had his hands soaked in Jewish blood. There aren't any.
Well, I think that that information certainly it should be made available to, particularly to people in the media. You know, particularly the BBC has a huge presence in media throughout the world, even right today, you know, and they do not call Hamas a terrorist organization, which to me takes any credibility they have as a fair-minded organ of the media. It puts it in jeopardy anyway. There's no doubt about that, you know. No doubt about that.
These people, sorry to interrupt that, but these people are in, I don't believe they're stupid. I don't believe they don't know the facts. If they can say that Hamas is not a terrorist organization, it's based on what? Just read their charter, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, that's true.
They will not come until we slaughter all the Jews. That's part of their Hamas founding charter. If you can't believe that Hamas is a terrorist organization, you didn't watch what happened on October the 7th. We didn't film it, they did. The people who deny that Hamas is a terrorist organization support Hamas, and they don't have a leg to stand on. So they come out with the lies, the same propaganda, the same indoctrination that the Palestinians come in when they talk to your media and press.
No, Barry, what about yourself personally? What about the day-to-day life for the Jewish people at the moment? What about, is there a heightened sense of apprehension about the whole thing?
There is a feeling here that the people still haven't come out of shock. You know, there's a Jewish tradition: when somebody dies, you have 7 days of mourning.
Yes.
We're past 7 days and we're still grief-stricken because there are so many people who have been killed and so many people who somehow survived and telling the horror that we're still going through this. And Pat, putting it simply, what we feel we're facing right now is a war, a clash of civilizations. If people cannot see that this is a war between good and evil after what happened, you're in total denial and you are on the side of the people who want to slaughter us. I make the point that first they came for the Saturday people, then they're going to come for the Sunday people. And it's there in the Hamas charter that these Hamas deniers are trying to blow smoke in your eyes. It really is a battle of good against evil. And if people cannot fathom that, I don't have the words. But we have to do it. And one of the reasons we have to do it is because the impossible happened. We Jews have a long history of what we know what anti-Semitism is. It's been going on for over 2,000 years.
Has there been...
Went back even before the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and slaughtered us and took us off into slavery back to Rome. Before that, it was the Babylonians, and it's gone on ever since. It went with the Nazis as well. Prior to the Nazis and after the Nazis, we had pogroms in Europe where anti-Semites came into the Jewish areas in order to slaughter the men, rape the women, burn the properties, and steal whatever they can. It then went over also into the Arab world, for instance, with the Farhud and a lot of the Arab countries, where they rose up against the Jews to slaughter them because we were undefended and we didn't have any defense, and they murdered us. And the few that managed to got out to come to Israel for safety. And to have this massacre, this genocide happen on our soil, the land of the Jewish people, the Jewish state.
Getting back to
this is put on our soul has to be understood.
Getting back to the politics of the thing, and we can't get away from the politics of the thing anyway. Is there much questioning of the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu in the light of the barbarism that happened in southern Israel, in the ferocity of it, and the lack of intelligence?
Right. This is going to be thoroughly investigated, and certainly heads are going to roll. What was behind it? My personal feeling, I will bow to the independent investigation that's going to happen. But generally, this was our Quraysh moment. I think what happened is people in our military and people in our intelligence dropped the ball. I think they underestimated what the Palestinians were up to. I think, yes, they knew they were arming up and practicing war games and things like this.
Yeah.
But they didn't estimate what was going on. And this was, the other double shock that we got over here. This happened just 1 week after Yom Kippur, which was Yom Kippur is a special day of mourning for the Jews, repentance of the Jews. But this Yom Kippur was exactly 50 years after the Yom Kippur War. What happened, if anybody hasn't been seen to the movie Golda, that what happened, this was a screw up by the intelligence who then had received accurate information of what the Egyptians were up to, and they were about to wage war on Israel. But the top military, Moshe Dayan, and the intelligence people as well, the general told Golda Meir, yeah, they say it, but we don't believe that the Egyptians have the ability to launch a war against us. So relax. So Golda Meir took their advice. What happens if we were invaded? Suddenly, shock, we weren't prepared.
On a personal level,
this was our second Yom Kippur. But more people got killed here than got killed on the first day of the Yom Kippur War.
Goodness me. But I'm a personal admirer of Golda Meir, anyway, myself personally, And I thought she was a magnificent person,
So heads will roll, and but this isn't the time. I want to tell you, you may watch on your TV screens what was happening for months before the war. And quite a lot of people were protesting against the government of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, they were out in the streets, yeah.
And at that time, people who were the senior commanders of the army and some of the air force were saying, we're not going to do our reserve duty. We're going to tell our soldiers and pilots not to turn up for reserve duty until we can change the government, which is anti-democratic, but that's another story. I don't want to get involved in that. However, Hamas somehow brought the whole country together. People were totally in shock on October the 7th and October the 8th. And by the end of October the 8th and 9th, when the army said everybody has to come in for reserve duty, everybody went. The people who said we're telling soldiers and pilots not to go said, you go. We could lose our country. You go. And actually, there wasn't 100% response. They said the other day there had been a 300% response because they wanted 100,000 soldiers to come up. They got another 200,000 who weren't registered, and a lot of those are the Orthodox Jews who never served in the army, who turned up and said, put me where you want to put us to serve, wherever we can serve, we want to serve. The country has come together like never before.
What do you see, Barry, being living there now? You said over the next, your thinking is that it's going to be another 3 or 4 months for this war to carry on.
I know governments, the international Democrats, the media are going to be turning against us, but we're going to go into this war with mufflers on our ears and do what we have to do.
Yeah.
When people come to say they want to murder Jews and they want to take away our country, from Palestine, from the river to the sea, headed by Hamas, we are going to destroy them. Have you heard of the expression, never again?
I have, yeah. I have, yeah.
Have you heard the expression, Masada will not fall again? That was the expression, was 2,000 years ago, where we were being conquered by the Romans and they took the whole of Israel. And it was Israel then. They conquered and destroyed our temple in Jerusalem. And the last stronghold was in the area of the Dead Sea in the Judean desert, where some last rebels had managed to take the summer palace of a ruler who was in support of the Romans, and they took it. And about 880 Jews took that stronghold. And the Romans came and put a barrier around them, and they put a breach wall up, and they began to batter the walls down. And at that time, where they tried fighting the Jews until every stone and every rock and every arrow they could do, and when they had no more defense, they decided to do a mass suicide. And so when the Romans broke in, they found 880 Jewish dead who preferred to die at their own sword rather than the Roman sword. This is a story, it's not from fantasy. This story is seared in the Jewish soul, into the Jewish history.
It
so
is.
when we talk about Masada will not fall again,
Masada is
7 was a massacre. We are not going to kill ourselves. We are going to kill the scourge of Jew hatred personified by Hamas. And let that be a lesson to any other Palestinian terrorists.
Well, Barry, I mean, I'm absolutely delighted to have spoken to you. And there's a lot of information in this show for people to digest and give serious thought to. We will disseminate the program as widely as we can anyway, you know.
May I ask of you before you wrap up to give some factual things? I've talked about the past and what's happening up to now. I just want to give you 2 or 3 sentences so that your followers are fully briefed. Okay, I've talked about us and Hamas. We are now fighting every day an increasing battle on our northern border against another Iranian proxy, Hamas. Hezbollah.
Yeah.
It's been ratcheting up every day. I just want to tell you that the sort of rockets and equipment and armory that Hamas is child's play compared with what Hezbollah have. If they start launching their rockets, they can fire anywhere between 50, 100, 200 rockets a day of more precise missiles that will go from Lebanon to Tel Aviv. We're in the middle. The main target is going to be the north of Israel and Haifa.
Yeah.
If that's not hard enough, there is also a danger on our eastern border, the one with Syria, where we have Syrian forces and also the Hezbollah, hardened, battle-trained soldiers, militia, who have fought over there for the dictator Assad against US-backed militia who are against the Assad regime, and they fought alongside the Iranians over there. So they're battle hardened, and they're on the Syrian border who can come down, if people know Israel, down from the Golan Heights and start taking Israel from the northeast as well. This is what we're facing right now. So this isn't just a simple battle between us Jews to take our revenge on Hamas for the slaughter and what they've done. This is a strategic battle for the world, and it could well be that maybe the Middle East will come down on maybe the Americans who have bases over here as well. But we don't want this to start up. We've been warning them, but actually this could escalate into something far more serious. So we could be talking about the survival of the state of Israel.
Well, there's no doubt that it is in serious danger, as you said, from three fronts. The one we know, the West Bank, and from Lebanon, from Syria, and I'm well familiar with the place. And of course, we have a United Nations contingent of Irish soldiers over in Lebanon. You know,
get them out. I'd written up and I spoke up about when an Irish soldier was killed fighting with UNIFIL for being a peacekeeper, and he was killed by either Hamas or Hezbollah. I don't know who it was.
Yeah,
but they're serving. I really don't. I wish I could find the words to their observers and reporting back to the United Nations. And the United Nations are doing nothing. If they're reporting to the United Nations and an Irish soldier has been killed and another wounded in giving this report to the United Nations, that in fact what's happening in Lebanon is a group of Islamists, two groups of Islamists, who are destroying Lebanon with an intent of destroying Israel, and they're not condemned in the United Nations. Why should your Irish guys be there serving when the message they give to the United Nations is ignored?
Absolutely, and we will. I will send you on the link of the Israeli ambassador's interview. I'll send it on to you, Barry, later on today. You know, and you can have a listen. But it's so superb.
I would suggest you give the Israeli ambassador a recording of this video as well.
Absolutely, and there is an excellent organisation in Ireland, just to be positive about it, run by Jackie Goodall and her friends.
Yeah, does very good work.
The Ireland-Israel Alliance, and it's just marvelous altogether, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Barry, stay safe, as they say here in Ireland. And
if you need progress reports in the future, a short video, an explanation of what's going on, I'd be happy to give you and your followers updated reports. Doesn't have to be long; could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah. So, you know, you because I think you may be starved of information that we know about. You either filtered or not being your people, or you might get more likely you're going to get a sort of biased report, and you want to know the Israeli perspective. As I said, be a short 10, 15-minute video or something like that. But it's important your people in Ireland know the truth of what's going on over here.
We'll do our bit here anyway to keep information flowing, and we'll check in with you again in a couple of weeks as well, as you said, and you're kind of offer up information. We can do this again. It's quite easy, thank God.
Use me as your eyes and ears, because I'm totally in it.
Well, Barry, to you and your family, stay safe, and other than that, I hope there'll be a positive resolution someday soon to the.
The only positive resolution is we destroy Hamas, and we can help turn Gaza over with the help of our allies in the Abraham Accord, with the United States. Certainly forget about the United Nations, forget about them, but also perhaps even this is a thing that would bring Saudi Arabia in, because they could play a leading role in this. We don't want to be in Gaza for one day necessary. We don't want to.
I think Saudi Arabia has the key to a lot of situations, and if they could only step up, as they say, and play a meaningful role, they could ease an awful lot of tensions. Anyway, Barry, from this edition of LiR Contributions, from Barry Shaw in Israel, we wish you good luck, good health, and stay safe to you and your family. And thank you very much for taking part in this show with us here on LiR Media. And we'll check in with you in a few weeks' time again.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Shalom.
Shalom.